Culture is a topic often discussed in today's world, and there is not a single definition for it. It can be built according to a field of study or discipline, such as anthropology, social linguistics, pedagogy, or others. It can also be built on the basis of language, context, the target outcome for cultural learning, or the models and approaches used. However, when analyzing the concept of culture and after studying in depth the problem, Patrick Moran in his book Teaching Culture, Perspectives in Practice, reached to the following definition. Culture is the evolving way of life of a group of persons, consisting of a shared set of practices, associated with a shared set of products, based upon a shared set of perspectives on the world, and set within a specific social context. In this definition, Moran points out that there are 5 dimensions that are interrelated and are necessary to outline the concept of culture: products, practices, persons, perspectives, and communities.
Through this definition, the dynamic nature of culture is exposed, as it is defined as the evolving way of life, constantly changing with the evolution of people and their creation of new products and practices. The dimension persons refers to the people or individuals that make it possible for a specific culture to exist and evolve. By the dimension products, Moran refers to tangible or visible artifacts that a culture produces, such as clothing, tools, or documents, but also to intangible ones, such as families, politics, or religion, and by perspective, he means to set of values, traditions, and beliefs that are present in a community and guide the actions of the person on it. This perspective can be explicit or implicit, and they conform a worldwide of the persons. The persons in a culture behave or act and interact in a certain way. This set of actions is what the mentioned author refers to as practices, and they also contain the notion of appropriateness and inappropriateness.
Finally, by communities, we can understand the associations of people that share the same practices, perspectives, and products in a certain context. In this way, it is important to remark that human beings are social by nature, and they need to communicate with others, which contributes to building a culture together. In the film Kathmandu, A Mirror in the Sky, the main character is a Catalan teacher called Laia, who is currently living and working in Kathmandu, the capital city of Nepal. This picturesque place is located in a valley surrounded by the Himalaya mountains. Although Kathmandu has a multi-ethnic population, it is characterized for having a large number of Buddhist and Hindu temples. In this context, Laia develops her work as a school teacher in a traditional poor Nepalese school, and is willing to change the traditional education she found there. At first, she tries to do so by applying innovative methods with her students, but she quickly realizes that there are more urgent problems, and at the end, she tries to help the lowest social status children in the community by educating and supporting them in several forms.
Firstly, when watching the film, we realize that there is a collision between 2 different cultures. On one hand, Laia, with her Occidental point of view, and on the other, the Oriental Nepalese culture. This is evident because the first thing we can observe in the film is the language barrier that exists between the protagonist and the people in the community. This is relevant due to the fact that one element of culture is language. As people of the same community and culture share the common language, in this case Nepalese language, which Laia doesn't speak. She only speaks Spanish and English, and she is often assisted by her friend and colleague Sharmila, who speak all three languages. When considering the dimensions of culture exposed by Moran, the tangible products are all the structures that can be seen in the film. For instance, the architecture, the characteristic Nepalese clothing, their art, the tools, or food. This is not of minor significance, as the building in the community have distinctive features, or the food that is also shown in the film, which is also very specific to that culture. On the other hand, there are intangible products that are very different from the Occidental ones, like the family structures. One clear example in the film is when we see Sharmila's family, which is conformed by Sharmila, her husband, her mother, and his husband's parents, and they all live in the same house. Also, politics and bureaucracy are shown in the film. For example, when Laia is trying to create a new school.
In the same way, taking the example of Laia trying to apply to open a new school, and regarding perspective, Nepal's culture is very different from Laia's one, as she depends on her husband to do so. This is because the role of women is of lower status than men's, and they are supposed to have access only to certain jobs or professions. What's more, they depend on their parents' decisions to get married or even to go out. The situation doesn't change much after they get married, as they change to depend on their husbands instead of their parents. So they must accept their decisions. Nepalese traditions are one of the most important parts of the plot, as the whole film is based on the crush existing between Laia and them. The protagonist seems to be uninformed about the tradition at times, which provokes her to offend Nepalese people without having the intention to do it. For example, in one part of the film, Laia discovers that a student of the school has lice, and she decides to cut her hair, unaware that in Nepal's traditions it is a presage of bad luck to cut the hair on that specific day. Moreover, Laia doesn't know about the social classes that conform Nepal society, and she doesn't know about the untouchables, who are the people that form the lowest social status in the community, and who are constantly being discriminated and isolated by the other social spheres. These are some examples of the perspective shown in the film, but there are more.
As mentioned before, the practices are all the actions carried on by the person in a community. In this case, all the characters in the film, except for Laia, belong to the Nepalese culture. Most of them behave guided by their perspective and the notion of appropriateness they were taught by their families, except for Sharmila, her friend, and Siri, her husband. Sharmila is also a teacher, and she helps Laia, sometimes even against her traditions because she is devoted to education. However, she submits to the pressure of Nepalese tradition and dies after having an abortion, as she is pregnant and is told that her baby is a girl, which would bring bad luck to her family, according to their belief. On the other hand, Siri helps Laia because he is in love with her, but he eventually realizes they are not compatible, and their beliefs speak louder, so he decides to leave her. To conclude, in this film is noticeable the difference that exists between the two cultures presented. It is easily observed in the explicit elements that appear in the film. In words of Morgan, the iceberg of culture, such as the clothing, the buildings, the means of transport, among others. But the implicit elements that underlie the film are also outstanding. The traditions, cultural values, and beliefs intertwine along the plot. On some occasions, Laia is required to accept certain traditions although she doesn't agree with them, and her ideas are also understood sometimes by the other characters. The most important aspect we can take as a conclusion in this film is to accept and respect other cultures the way they are, in mind that we all like our culture to be respected.